everybody, welcome back in the shed. I'm Troy. This is Dave.
Howdy-ho, friends.
And today we're going to talk about not the top 3, but the top 4 Indigenous or Native American artists or bands. So when Dave came up with this topic, I was like, I don't really know, or I can't think of any, Indigenous like bands or artists necessarily. And then Dave sent me the list, and I was looking at it. I was like, yeah, I know some of these artists, but I'm not that familiar with them. So we decided to do something a little different tonight. And since Dave's the expert on the subject,
not the expert, but
more of an expert than I am.
All right.
He's going to pick his top 4 Indigenous or Native American bands or artists. But before we get started, why don't you leave your picks below, see if they match ours. Also, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video. So, first of all, what made you come up with this topic?
Well, we've covered a lot of different genres, especially doing like we did during Black History Month. So we did black artists, and we've done male singers, we've done female singers, we've done duos, we've done a lot of different segments of rock and roll. And one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that Native American or Indigenous, we just want to use that term, have been part of rock and roll for a long time. I mean, really going back to some of the earliest rock and roll days. So I thought, yeah, let's do something a little different. Let's talk about this, segment of America and Canada that's not really gotten a lot of recognition when it comes to their impact and importance, and especially rock and roll. So that's what I want to have to say about it, Troy.
Let's do it. First of all, let's move this fire away because my legs are burning.
All right, give it a kick. Don't run it into the... All right, there you go.
All right.
We weren't going to have a fire tonight, but it was only in the 50s. But
it's it sets the vibe.
It does a certain what's the French word I'm thinking of?
Je ne sais quoi.
Ambiance.
Ambiance. Little ambiance. So, anyway, so let's get started. What's your number 4 Indigenous band or artist?
My number 4 is going to be Redbone. They were formed in LA in 1969, and the members of the band were of mixed Native American and Mexican heritage. In fact, the name Redbone is a Cajun term for mixed race. Supposedly, Jimi Hendrix kind of inspired these guys to form an all Native American band because, as many of you know, Jimmy's grandmother was full-blooded Cherokee.
Well, you say as many of you may know. I didn't know that. I had no idea.
You didn't know Jimi Hendrix was
No,
part Indian?
I didn't know that, no.
Yeah, he sure was. Well, look at him, man. He's got the high cheekbones.
Yeah,
I mean,
I guess so,
really,
yeah.
if you take a good look at Jimmy, of course he has African American and white, but he's probably, I guess, a quarter Native. So
Okay.
yeah,
I didn't know that.
Well, learn something new every day.
Every day, man.
All right.
Every day.
The Redbone's first hit was the Witch Queen of New Orleans, which came out on that album, and it actually went to number 21 on the Billboard charts.
The Witch Queen of New Orleans.
Of course, the big hit that people of my age know is the song "Come and Get Your Love."
Hey, what's the matter with your hair?
Which I had no idea that. Well, first of all, I'd heard the song probably a million times,
Yeah,
of course.
it's hard not to hear it.
Yeah, but I didn't really know who sang that song, and I had no idea these guys were Native American until I watched the video on YouTube, and they're all decked out in the
Indian regalia.
Yeah.
Sure enough. But that song actually made it into the top 5 on the Billboard charts, and really made these guys, kind of world renowned. Their music style is really a mix of like R&B and Cajun and blues and country, and it's really like a gumbo of musical styles.
Yeah, because that song, I mean, if you listen to it, it doesn't have any Native American, what I would call rhythms or beats in it. You know, it sounds
drums.
like just kind of a 70s
Kind of
rock song, funk rock song.
Funk
yeah.
rock song,
Yeah.
But it's a great song, and I mean, like I said, growing up in the 70s, you know, everyone heard that song.
Yeah.
Like, I'm older than Troy, so he might have caught it later, but it's just a really cool song, and there's a really cool band. And anyways, that's going to be my number 4.
That's a great number 4. So what's your number 3?
Right, my number 3 is going to be Link Wray. Link Wray was born in North Carolina in 1929, and he was of, I believe it was Shawnee Indian descent. Now, Link was in the, you know, he's an older guy. He was in the Korean War and served his country honorably. He got tuberculosis while in Korea, and he spent a year in the hospital
Really?
from that. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Link's most famously known because in 1958-59, he wrote that song called Rumble. That song is really credited as being the first song in rock and roll to use like distortion, you know, and like heavy tremolo.
Yeah. Wasn't he credited for coming up with the power chord, I think?
He was also credited with being the inventor of the power chord.
Yeah.
And, you know, the power chord is basically, you know, 3 notes, but that's the song that used the power chord.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever saw that movie, It Might Get Loud,
Oh, yeah. Oh, I love that movie, yeah.
with Jack White,
Jimmy Page.
and Edge. And there's a really cool part in that movie where Jimmy's in his house and he's playing that record, you know, and he's just kind of bram, 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 kind of air guitar into it. But Jimmy credited that song as being a huge influence on his career.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Now he's starting to increase vibrato on his amplifier. You hear blah, 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 blah. It gets more intense.
He collaborated with a lot of people over his career, but most of the songs we probably haven't heard, but he'll always be known for the guy that wrote Rumble.
Yeah.
And how important it was really in the history of rock and roll.
But the first time I heard the rumble, it was like, that was something that had so much profound attitude to it.
It really does.
Yeah, when you sent me the list, I started, you know, listening to some of the stuff on YouTube and on Spotify and stuff. And there's a song I really like. It's called Switchblade.
Yeah, that's another song
Yeah, it's
that he got kind of semi-famous
yeah,
for.
that's an awesome song. Yeah, he has a great guitar tone. It's gritty and heavy and sort of just like it's raw for sure.
Yeah, I've always heard stories about how he got that distortion and
Yeah, you cut the
poke holes in the
Yeah.
cone or whatever it was, or
Yeah.
cut the cone on the amp, and I don't know. Other people have done it since he did it, but he was kind of the guy that invented that.
Oh, wow.
And hey, man, I got a nice amp here. Let me just poke a bunch of holes and
Just see what happens.
get a speaker cone. But it worked, man. That's all I can say.
Yeah, exactly. Before we get to number 2, I think we need a beer break. I do anyway.
Why don't you get one?
Okay.
Someone has been in my room and taken my beers away from my room.
I don't think so, darling.
Ah,
Who would do that?
Well, my number 2 is going to be Blackfoot. When I was 15, and I've said this before, I was...
In college.
I'm not Dookie. Wish I was. But now when I was 15, I was in Minnesota, and my dad took me a job and moved us to Winston-Salem, North Carolina, into the Deep South. And I got immediately immersed into... I was into music, but I really got dipped hard into Southern rock. And, you know, at the time, 76, it was, you know, pretty much Allman Brothers and Skinner and Charlie Daniels, Marshall Tucker. But there were these kind of second-tier bands like, you know, the Outlaws and Elvin Bishop and Black Oak, Arkansas, and Blackfoot. But I really kind of got into all that stuff, you know, and I actually went to a lot of concerts in Greensboro and saw a lot of these bands. And I was pretty much all in on Southern rock at that point. Of course, I loved a lot of Zeppelin, Aerosmith, all that kind of stuff. But Southern rock was really, the heyday was the 70s. I mean, there were so many bands on the radio and songs that everyone got to know. And Blackfoot was one of those bands. And they were made up of kind of a mix of Lakota Sioux, Cherokee, and Blackfoot Indian tribes. Of course, you know, Ricky Medlock was the head of the band, lead guitarist and singer. Most people know this, but Ricky Medlock was an original member of Lynyrd Skynyrd. This was when because they're from Jacksonville, and so was Blackfoot. And the incarnation of Lynyrd Skynyrd before they cut their album included Ricky. And of course, later, you know, after I guess Alan Collins died, and a lot of the members were still alive at that point, Ricky Medlock joined Skynyrd, and it's still in the band to this day, although there are no original members of Lynyrd Skynyrd. But that first album, you know, Blackfoot Strikes, was a great album. They had that song, totally rocking song, Train, Train.
Well, train, take me on.
And one of my favorite songs of that genre is Highway Song.
Highway song, you sing it on and on.
You know, you can't really call yourself a big fan of Southern rock if you don't include Blackfoot in there, because of course there are so many bands that fall under that umbrella, but Blackfoot was a rockin' killer band. And I don't think I ever saw them, but you know, I wish I had, and I wish Ricky to get whoever's left around and do a Blackfoot tour, because they really had a lot of great songs. But that's going to be my number 2.
Number 2. All right, let's get to your number 1. And I'm wondering if it's the same as mine, but it won't because I don't have a pick. What's your number 1? I notice I say that a lot.
Because we don't know each other.
Because we don't know each other's picks. Even though I did know your picks this time because you sent me the list so I could have, you know.
All right.
You know.
Well, we broke from tradition on this one.
So I could have a little bit of insight of what you're talking about.
All right, well, that's good.
What's your number 1?
All right, my number 1 is going to be Robbie Robertson.
You had a job as a guitarist by the time you were 16.
I was playing on the road full time, making a living, and playing the Chitlin circuit down south.
Few Indigenous artists can, you know, really sail to the heights that Robbie attained. You know, he wasn't American, he was Canadian. He was of Cayuga and Mohawk descent. So, you know, those tribes were up in the Northeast.
Okay.
And That's Robbie. I don't know what the percentage was, but I think he was like 50%. He formed the band called The Band after, you know, recording while they were recording with Bob Dylan. After the Dylan era, they formed one of the best bands in my book of all time, and the band called The Band, which is sadly Garth Hudson just died, and he was the last surviving member of that band. But their album Music from Big Pink, which was their debut album, which was named after this house that they had in Woodstock, this pink house.
She walks these hills in a long black veil.
It has these songs like Tears of Rage, The Weight,
Take a load off Fanny. Take a load for free.
and I Shall Be Released. These songs in that album kind of made them huge, and they continued on, and they had a bunch of just amazing albums. I've got a bunch of the band. I've got the whole chronology, 4-disc set of them, and totally love that band. Of course, they eventually split up, but before they did, they recorded a movie and an album called The Last Waltz.
Virgil Kane is the name, and I served on the Danville train.
And this was an album that Martin Scorsese produced.
No, the
And-
movie.
The movie. He produced the movie, and it had so many people on there. Dylan, Neil Young, Joni. So many people were in that movie, and it was just one of the greatest concert, movies of all time. I mean, there's a lot of them out there, but this one's top 5 for sure. But after the band broke up and everyone kind of went their separate ways, Robbie continued as a solo artist, and I bought his first 2 solo albums, and I love those albums. And they were produced by Daniel Lanois, and it's really got a sound totally different from the band, mainly because of Daniel Lanois. He had this real atmospheric kind of, he produced U2 albums.
Who else is gonna bring you a broken arrow?
He really kind of stayed busy, and he did a bunch of movies, soundtracks for Martin Scorsese up until his last movie. And Robbie was working on that album, or that movie soundtrack, up until he died. And that movie was Killers of the Flower Moon. Robbie is really pivotal in the history of music, especially with the band, and then his heritage, his native heritage. So that's going to be my number 1, and that's going to be my 4 Indigenous bands.
Good picks. We should probably do every episode like this, really. That way I can just sit here and drink my beer and learn something.
It's so unfair, Troy.
All right, well, that is Dave's top 4 Indigenous or Native American bands or artists. Leave your picks below. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video.
And I'm leaving off a lot, and we'd love to hear some of your suggestions. So some of them are kind of obscure, but there's some other ones that I didn't include.
Yeah.
We added an extra one this time, make it 4, but I'm certainly not covering the whole spectrum. So thanks again, folks.
We'll see you next time in the shed.
All right, bye-bye.